What is up, everybody? Here we are back on a Wednesday night. It's been a while, but glad that y'all showed up for this one as you are starting to file in, as I can see. Definitely don't be afraid to put your 2 cents in there as we are going to be discussing one of the greatest, and I feel very, very much a cult classic film, Clive Barker's NightBreed, and I have my wonderful friend with me, Magister Bill M. Welcome back for a third tenure.
Yes. Thank you for having me, and I'm happy to have this opportunity to just share a bunch of stuff, my thoughts, and everything about my personal all-time favorite movie.
Yes, and I gotta say, after watching it again, it had been a minute since I had watched it, and just fell in love with it all over again. You know, but as we know, not always do films really bring the story to life from a book. And this was based on Clive Barker's, is it Cabal?
Yep.
Okay, just wanted to make sure I got that right.
Yeah, the movie was actually titled Cabal also in different countries, but here in the U.S., and we can get more into this later, that they were trying to market it as like a horror movie. They was like, no, Cabal's not doing. Let's call it NightBreed. That's better for that.
I guess they just felt that it would be catchier.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Try to get the slasher audience, I guess. Yeah.
Me personally. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I was gonna say, I think I heard from actress Ann Bobby, who plays Laurie. She described the movie not as a horror movie, but as a mythology movie. And when she said that, I just thought it made a lot more sense. And they
very much so
tried adding some slashiness to it. But,
I mean, we have a serial killer, which I think is appropriately a psychiatrist, because that's just kind of not it's fun, just like Hannibal Lecter, but that of course he comes later. But even all the way back to Jack the Ripper, I always thought that a killer of that magnitude would be even more horrific as some sort of doctor of some kind.
Yeah, there's that element of a person you trust your whole self into that is doing all these horrific things.
Yeah. And the interesting part, of course, because the movie does have to move at a certain pace. And, we kind of find that out a little bit early, which is not something we're used to. Usually it's like you wait to the end of the film to find out, if you haven't read the book. Paul says, I love the director's cut of NightBreed. I don't think I've seen the director's cut.
Okay. Yeah, there was a big push to get that done. There was a group that was set up on Facebook about 10 years ago called Occupy Midian. And a bunch of fans, including myself, were really pushing to get the director's cut because apparently Clive Barker had found a VHS tape literally at the bottom of his closet that had like an extra 20 minutes. And HorrorCon, there was a Comic-Con horror thing going on in New Jersey that year where they got the cast together for Q&A and autographs and stuff, which I went to.
Oh man.
Was really thrilled with that. But one of the things they had was called the Cabal Cut, where they took some of the extra scenes and were putting it, trying to piece it together. Unfortunately, the extra footage wasn't the same video quality, but a director named Russell Charrington did his best to sort of put things together. And yeah, certainly some significant changes from the theatrical version. It was definitely more closer to the book in some ways, but yeah, they're I think both great in their own things. And I know there are still scenes that still didn't even make it into the director's cut. Things
No
that got
kidding. Is it
yeah, there are
because of,
things
do
that
you
get.
think it's because of gore or
I think it was because of timing, trying to fit everything in. Um, or maybe some things just like weren't finished. Like for example, there's near the very end where Loudsburg is trying to show Boone that there's like a vision, the whole place is gonna blow, and it just like cuts to a scene, and I was watching that thinking like that looks like there should be a scene in between that just didn't show up.
and there's Boone there
Boone,
in his
transforming.
Midian self.
Yeah.
So yeah, why don't you go ahead and set this up for us a little bit?
Okay.
Did you read the book first before you saw this film?
No, I actually saw the movie first. And what happened was this was back in like the early 90s. I was a teenager and like a lot of teenagers, a night owl on the weekends.
I'm still
And
a night owl.
yeah, it still comes back to me. But it was like around 1 in the morning and I was like, all right, I think tonight I'm gonna go to bed at 1 and not stay up till 3 like sometimes. And I'm
But
watching
that's so much
TV. HBO is on, and this movie called Nightbreed is starting. I was like, well, I'll check this out for a little bit, and I was like glued, watched the entire thing, and then
it's
like
easy to
yeah,
happen.
and then like a week or two later, the same thing happened. It was like like 1 a.m. I'm gonna go to bed. Oh, this movie Nightbreed, yeah, that was pretty cool. I think I'll watch just a little bit of this. Watch the whole thing again.
A
Then
little bit.
later on,
It
I
sucks
bought the
you
book.
in.
Though. Yeah, but yeah, I bought the book afterwards.
Okay. So, before we like really get into the plot and all that, did you kind of like the book more than the film, or did you feel the film did it justice, or maybe on two different levels?
Yeah, I mean, I know this is blasphemy, but initially just liked the movie more than the book. I liked how they told that story in that different way. The thing about movie adaptations of books is that it's not supposed, in my opinion, they're not supposed to try to cram the whole book into a 90-minute film. It's
Right.
more of a challenge of, how can we take this and put it in a movie format that works in that time interval? And I think they did that well. A lot of people disagree. There are lots of people who hate the movie, but yeah,
Wow.
that's not my problem.
So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I read the book like a
Mm-hmm.
long freaking time ago, so I would almost have to go back because it's so much easier just to throw the movie on because I love all the actors
Yeah.
in it, and it was just so much. I don't know. I almost like this film better than Hellraiser. Now that is straight up blasphemy because everybody loves Clive Barker's
Yeah.
Hellraiser series until all of the sequels.
Yeah. There was actually, I think this is a good time to mention, there was a crossover comic book, 2-part comic book story of Hellraiser versus the Nightbreed called
Oh,
Jihad. And it was part of
ooh.
the Nightbreed comic book series too. It was separate from that, but moving into it, there was a 25-issue comic book series of Nightbreed that
Oh, wow.
came
I
out
didn't know
afterwards.
that.
Yeah, the first 4 issues, pretty much a comic book adaptation of the movie in the book, but the rest are all like sequel stories of other people, different writers coming in to propose what may have happened at the end of the movie/book.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Do you feel like the book could have been more than one film?
I think it could have. I mean, both the book and the movie end on a bit of a suspense where it like either could be a sequel for that matter. Yeah, they could very well have stretched it out to 2 movies. I know that there has been talk. I'm not up to date on this news, but I know there was talk about a TV series
Yes.
they were going to make on that.
I'm
I
wondering
should
if
know
that's
more
ever going
about
to
that.
come about.
Yeah. But I mean, getting back to your question about the movie versus the book, one thing I did like about the book, though, is that once I finished the movie and then I read the book, there were a lot of things that made more sense that I couldn't really, didn't quite understand in the movie. And that was one of the big complaints about the movie. Critics were saying, like, well, you never know. I don't understand what these characters are doing or why they're doing it. And this doesn't make any sense. But the book helps fill in, I think, a lot of those gaps.
Absolutely. Let's see here. So, for instance, we got, this character,
Shunasasu.
which almost has kind of, animal flavor to it in a way. And then we have this guy, which he's
Lude.
just bad.
Yeah. Lude.
Lude. I'm so glad you know the names.
Yeah.
So
great one-liners between him and his partner.
Absolutely. So, with characters like that, and they all look so different situations. Could you kind of explain for everybody out there, for those that haven't read the book? Because I'm sure there are a lot of NightBreed fans that never read the book. So kind of like, how did those creatures come to be? Were they once human?
That's a good question. And actually going back to the comic book, there's not much in the way of the original book about some of the origins of there, but the comic book series did expand on to show where some of these, characters came from. The berserkers, the big monsters. There's a backstory about like this German scientist. She was like a genetic engineer and formed them. But, the connecting line is that all of them found like a place in Midian among, the NightBreed, even if they're not all like the same species. There's something they have in common. And that kind of gets to the title Cabal, because a cabal, is a group that's bounded by, an idea and all that, not, bounded by an ethnicity, say.
Sure. Because basically the I don't know, I guess what most people would say, are freaks and this and that. So it almost kind of, there's so many different undertones to the story that I think were somewhat political in nature.
Yeah, there's the whole idea also that the NightBreed, they're the monsters, but they're the protagonists. And you realize like the real true monsters, it's kind of cliche like these days, but I think this movie really exemplifies that. It's like the true monsters are the humans who, don't understand things, that are strange to them and want to destroy everything, destroy things that are different. And you see that manifested in characters like not only, Dr. Decker, the clinical physician, but then like Captain Eigerman, head of the police force, just wanting to kill the freaks,
Yep, there he is,
Dr.
the lovable
Decker.
doctor.
Yeah. There is a blooper I noticed, and I put this into IMDb, and it's still, I think it's still there. That scene, he like pulls off the mask to reveal himself, and like the mask is like tucked underneath his collar, is with a tie, and he pulls it off, and then he puts it back on. But then, like in the next scene, it's
completely under,
neatly, underneath.
It's like,
only a couple of bloopers I found. Yeah. There's bound to be a blooper in almost every movie, except that.
My parents used to call that movie mistakes.
Yeah.
Every movie had one. I think all of them have. You miss one detail, it's going to show.
Yeah.
And, people that are astute enough to look for those things. Because I've got people all the time telling me, oh, did you see this? And how that didn't work out right. And, suddenly the actor is different.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one thing I had in my notes from watching it last night too. So definitely glad you brought that up.
The only other kind of blooper I think I've ever found was, this is only on the VHS version, when Boone, the scene where Boone is shot and the camera is panning out. If you look really closely on the bottom of the screen, you can see the edge of the camera platform for just a second, and it drops out of view. They corrected that for the DVD release and other releases.
Okay.
And I always wondered, I wonder if they did that because I mentioned that on IMDb and maybe they took my notes. Never know. Never know.
See, fans are just as important as the people that make the films. So, for some of you out there in Black Flame Land, if you haven't seen this movie yet, because, the generations now, they know Hellraiser to like the umpth degree.
Mm-hmm.
But this movie was a little bit like style-wise, story-wise, so much more dynamic. Not very predictable either. Basically, Boone was seeing Dr. Decker for, I can't even really remember how they were originally doctor and patient, but, basically gets him to, come see him again because he wants to pin. Now that's my big question. I'm still kind of on the fence about this. Did he want to just pin the murders on him so he could be scot-free, or did he want to do that so he could be the one to go to Midian?
That's a good question. I always thought it was the former, that he was just trying to, pin it on him. And at least throughout the movie, like, Decker kind of denies, like, Midian, like, okay, well, it was, this thing he kind of made up or other people made up. And
yeah, because he spent an awful long time trying to get him to not believe it. Yeah. And that, they always painted a picture of Midian as the place that will absolve you of your sins.
Yeah. How does Narcisse put it? It takes away the pain.
Yeah.
Where he finds that sanctuary for freaks. There were a couple scenes in the movie that I get the strong impression were put in post-production to try to help the plot along. Because there's a scene where Decker is listening back to the tapes of Boone and gets angry. I think they do that to try to put in the idea that maybe he does have some kind of connection to Midian, and also to make it abundantly clear with all the knives and all that, okay, this guy's the killer. So we're dropping spoilers left and right, but
that's okay. There's no better way to get you interested in seeing something for the first time by hearing about it.
Yeah.
So that's okay. Mm-hmm. And then how he ends up getting him to basically believe that he was the one that committed these murders without knowing it. Which that is not a simple task, but what do you do?
Well, you would think but as a psychologist, you can tell from I think from the scenes with the tapes, he's doing, programming in
big time.
Some hypnosis and the power of suggestion and stuff to make him think you really did kill these people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One aspect of another thing, and this goes back to a difference between the book and the movie. A thing in the movie that was a thing in the book that was originally put in the movie but ended up being cut out is the relationship of the mask. Because in the book, Dr. Decker is is multiple personality disorder, and he thinks the mask is what speaks to him and is what is doing all the murders.
It's what drives him to do these crimes.
Yeah. And so in the book, there's it's like the mask is talking to Decker, put me on, Philip.
Now, if they would have added that in there, that just would have been monumental.
Yeah, I don't know why they decided. Maybe they thought it was overcomplicating things. I don't know.
Huh?
But there are other scenes.
Why would he even choose that mask in the first place?
Yeah. He would probably say the mask chose him.
Right.
Yeah. But there are other like little scenes like that. They're different from like the book versus the movie. Like when Decker shows up after Narcisse pulls, his scalp off and stuff. Decker is there, and Boone runs away after he sees Decker. And in the book, he sees Decker, and Decker runs away as Boone chases him, because
Yes.
Boone kind of realizes, like, wait a minute, you're the guy here who completely set me up. And yeah,
There's
there's
that
Narcisse.
lovable
Tyrannosaurus.
Cupcake. He's one of my favorite comic reliefs of the story.
Yes, yeah. He was one of the only people on the cast who was not there at the Q&A panel. I was so bummed. I really wanted to meet him. I got to meet everybody else though, pretty much.
Still badass no matter what.
Yeah. I'm trying to remember his name now. Hugh Quarshie, who played Detective Joyce, was not there.
Mm-hmm.
But I remember I saw him in The Phantom Menace, because he's there on Queen Amidala's ship, like taking care of like first mate.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember watching, that in the theater.
That's
I was,
right.
Oh my God, that's Detective Joyce. He's gonna fight the Sith. Wow. Okay.
But yeah. So was Narcisse just insane, or did he really think that he had to prove himself worthy, to go to Midian, or is by death the way?
That's a good question. I mean, I think he was generally insane, from that in what he did, but yet still has a, connection. He was the one who helped, bring Boone along.
Mm-hmm.
And you see more of that connection, I think, maybe in the book and helping him along. But
yeah,
but
see,
he was still insane.
Yeah, I love making these connections between the film and the book itself. Just like some people I've heard people say before, like, so the fact that Boone was bit, that's how he got to become. But since he was already having these dreams, like, constantly, was that inevitably his fate? Like, was it just within him to go there anyway?
There are a lot of like the themes there with the mythology of destiny and things like that. And, we see his paintings in the murals and all that. So I think that it was like the premonitions he had, but then it was finally, the bite that mocks death, as Pelican put it.
Man, they really put some stank on it. They loaded him up with 30 rounds. It's like, even the coroner guy makes a joke about it.
Yeah. But as he holds up the leather jacket, like, we're taking any chances. Like,
It's like, okay, we definitely made our point, because you can see just a myriad of bullet holes through him.
Yeah.
Now let's get to the nitty gritty. So obviously Boone is like dead now. So, he gets welcomed in, sort of, because the one guy that bit him is always kind of just doesn't like anybody.
Yeah.
To be judged before Baphomet.
Yeah. Are you prepared to be judged by the god? And I have a confession to make. I know, as I'm a Satanist, and Satanists will say, "Oh, it's pronounced Baphomet," and because that's how it's really supposed to be pronounced.
Gotcha.
That's the formal answer. But I still say Baphomet, and I still say Baphomet because they say it that way in NightBreed. So that's how I always refer to it. That was the first version I heard.
Yeah, I've heard so many people say it that way over the last 30 years. I think it's just kind of stuck with me.
Yeah.
I don't even think about it. Mm-hmm. Nowadays, people just call it Baffy. I guess it just makes it cuter, right?
Yeah.
So why do you think Clive Barker chose that to be the god in this case?
I don't know. You could say it maybe it was a reflection of like Knights, the Knights Templar and
Mm-hmm.
groups like that that had a Baphomet and sort of the idea of being an underground cabal in that sense. So maybe in that. That's
Okay.
my only guess.
Because I mean, obviously, it makes it have ancient ties. So
Yeah,
you know,
the connotations in that. There's a backstory
although
in the comic books also on Baphomet, like himself, and what happened years before, and the forming of Binion and all that. So
there's a nice look
there he
at.
is. Yeah, yeah. In
Now, I find it so interesting because you can see elements of what those statues and everything else kind of looks like just without an animal face.
yeah.
There's no
Also, in the end of the book, and this happens also in the end of the movie, but it's not really quite clear. They take pieces of Baphomet out in as a scatter.
That's right.
So the idea is when we meet again, we'll put the pieces back together.
Absolutely. So just kind of interesting how Clive can pull these occult themes into what he does. And it's like it's seen throughout so much in just about every book that he's ever written. It's always been very dark, very
Mm-hmm.
maniacal things that all the other horror writers and directors didn't want to touch on. They just
Yeah.
stick with monsters and insanity. Instead, he does it in such a, just like even with Hellraiser, how their domain actually looks.
Mm-hmm.
That was one thing about one of the sequels I really dug because all these like different rooms, and it almost seems like it's in a parallel universe.
Yeah,
But
and also like
instead,
within stupid notifications going out. The another thing with Midian in there, you kind of see miscellaneous pieces. It's like the breed themselves are from all different places, and you see all these weird artifacts from different centuries and things like that. Like a piano is down there. Yeah, how did that get down there?
yeah,
Things
and
I wonder about.
when Lori goes in there trying to find Boone,
Yeah,
you get to see a lot more of, I
the
don't know, I
underground. Yeah,
guess the NightBreed that stays down there, and so many
yeah,
of them are
yeah,
just so interesting. And sometimes you catch them in a flash. You don't get them,
yeah.
for like a minute or two. So
Yeah, and there were a lot of great like monsters that got cut out of the movie from that, and because I have like magazines from Fangoria and stuff like that where they cover the movie, and you see all these elaborate monsters and photo shoots, and I can't imagine that must suck so bad to like have been working and putting on like those prosthetics for like hours, and you keep doing that every day, and your scenes like on the cutting room floor.
just at that case in point, last week I had C. Ernst Harthon, who has played some very, very famous characters, 13 Ghosts, Scooby Doo 2, and some other, kind of big horror stuff. And he's had that same thing happen. His rebut to that was, oh, well, I got paid, but you're never
Yeah,
going to see it. Unless it's like a added in deleted scene or something. But yeah, it would have been more interesting to see a lot more of the NightBreed characters because each one, you almost kind of wonder. I don't know. I got this feeling years ago, when I first saw it back in the 80s. Like, were these people just like punished and they became these things, or is
yeah.
kind of indicative of their natural beast?
Yeah, I mean some of them have background stories, and like I said, with the comic books, and also one of the other books, which I will show later. There were backstories written to some of them. So that would be a good segue to show off merch.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I have, being a NightBreed fanatic, I've collected a lot of NightBreed stuff over the years, and I'll show some of what I've got. First of all, we got the movies themselves. I bought the VHS. Then I had to get the DVD when that came out. That was the long box one. But then there was the normal box DVD that came out after that. And finally, there was the Blu-ray, the special Blu-ray release that had the theatrical. This is where you can get the director's cut and the theatrical cut.
Nice.
In there. So yeah, there's a commentary also from Clive Barker. The VHS had a nice little introduction from Clive Barker that I don't think made it to the other releases.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there was the book, which I have, and I got a couple of copies of the book. The very first copy I have, this was released in a couple different editions. There's the standalone one, but then there's also a this version is the one I ended up buying that has one of the books of blood attached onto it.
Oh, almost like a
it's
two
like four of the short stories. The one that has The Last Illusion, which is what Lord of Illusions is based on.
Which it's another Clive Barker classic.
Yeah.
I love.
And the other copy of the book I have, which I think is worth its weight in gold, is this one that was limited to 300 copies. And this one also has an introduction from Church of Satan High Priest Peter H. Gilmore, talking about the background of the story and also some of the satanic significance of the story. I'm going to read you a quick excerpt from it. It's a whole essay. Not enough time to read it great, but just like an example, I'll share for you guys. The primary characters of Cabal are organized into two significant trinities, with two characters serving as a bridge between two groups. These trinities represent two worlds: the above-ground normal people who embrace the sun and are the established society, and an underground of the living dead lovers of darkness, who are called the NightBreed. Essentially, normality equals light and monstrous equals dark establishes an easily graspable classic division for most readers. For me, there is an implied third shadow trinity emerging from the suspected sources for the novella, and that shall be revealed later. Boone is the primary of the dark trinity. His destiny is to become Cabal, a very direct variant of the Christ myth, and his death and resurrection as the Messiah of the monsters of Midian makes him a sort of antichrist. He is paired with Lori, the normal woman whose love for Boone will expose aspects of herself which she cannot conceive in the beginning of the story. They find a third in Narcisse, a broken man who serves as a prophet, pointing the way for Boone's pilgrimage and the destiny of all the players. These three are on a journey of self-evolution to uncover and accept their true natures. So that was just an example, and he shows the sigil in there saying, yeah, hey, the Baphomet thing, we kind of use that too. Anyway, back to the merch. I have the book on tape.
Oh, wow.
Which I've since digitized for myself.
Sweet.
This is a NightBreed video game that was released. 2 floppy disks on there. I always had problems trying to play it because you got things aren't backwards compatible these days.
Right.
They did release a game. And let's see. Speaking of books, this is a great book if you can get this on eBay. If you're a NightBreed fan, it's called the NightBreed Chronicles, and this is like a glossary of the different characters.
Nice.
And little background stories and stuff. There's good old Narcisse.
Gotta love his big old grin.
Baphomet, rather, yeah. Um, in the Lylesburg, played by Doug Bradley, even though that's not his voice. In fact, there are a lot of people in the breed that were the same actors in Hellraiser, who played some of the Cenobites, also played some of the Nightbreed. But
Well, yeah.
they gives little background stories too that aren't in the book and aren't in the movie, but explain some of their origins and stuff. So it was a really fun book there.
Absolutely. Almost a
I'll
compendium.
show you. The movie. What's that? Sorry?
That's almost like a compendium to the movie.
Yeah. This is just a promo board, for the movie. And when I went to here's one of the scripts. I found this in a store back in the 90s that sold movie memorabilia.
Holy crap balls.
It's an earlier draft because there are some scenes in it that didn't wind up in the movie, not even like in the director's cut. So I also
worth a lot.
Have my 8x10s of that, and I got some of the cast to go sign those. So
nice. Did you actually? Oh, so you did get to meet Doug Bradley then?
Yeah, and he signed it to Bill. The Tribes of the Moon embrace you.
That sounds like Doug.
Yeah. And the actor who played Kinski, he was saying, like, so usually when I sign it, I either sign it "Run while you still got legs," or one of the other lines that he has. I was like, I'll take that one. So yeah. So there's a bunch, the 8x10s. As I mentioned, I got the comic books, as well.
Yeah, let's get a look at the comics.
They're all in a box right now. I'm sorry, they're like packed away in the attic, but
gotcha.
Probably find them on eBay. So when I went to the Monster Con, there were some people who made their own merchandise that they were selling. So I bought a couple of those. This was an energy drink somebody made called Boonshine. And if you can read, it says Boonshine, no natural ingredients.
That is hilarious.
And it's basically it's probably just like a Red Bull with a new
with like a slip cover.
Yeah, it's probably that underneath.
Kind of genius.
It's a nice novelty thing, to have.
That's kind of genius when you think about it.
And
I should do that with Diet Coke.
Yeah, I'll show you one more item I got. Somebody made at the convention. We're making this. This is a reprint of the same shirt that Narcisse wears.
Oh yeah,
you remember that? He's wearing the King Rocker shirt in there. So
I think in the film, didn't he say he was an actor?
Yeah, I'm an actor. See. And they kind of played that up, I think, a bit in the book and also in the comic books, also that he was a former actor. So, and like photos with the cast and all that. But that's most of my Nightbreed collection.
That is definitely a killer collection, and I definitely didn't see anything like that when I went on the Nightbreed site. Which hopefully, they'll be watching because I did tag them in this. So, but the last post that was on there was this just whole wall of memorabilia. And I was like, holy shit, where was this stuff?
Yeah.
But
people there are fans who have like twice as much stuff
they do nowadays.
Yeah. I know there's some fans who have like much more than I do because I was like talking with them, I mentioned like, hey, I got a copy of the script. It's like, oh yeah, I have 5 of those. different drafts, and so
sheesh. I mean, those are pieces of history. And for the time that this film came out,
1990.
That's it, yeah. So it was pretty much ahead of its time.
Yeah. I heard somebody complain once, like, well, I didn't like it because I thought it was too 1980s. I was like, well, it was filmed in 1989. Well, yeah, I just thought it was too 80s. Like what were you expecting? Like Boone to be wearing like Tivas and a baseball cap backwards, and Lori
Right.
to be singing Hanson? Like what? Not 90s enough for you? What the hell?
I mean, yeah, none of that stuff was even really thought of. Fashion wasn't even really like that. Did he expect everyone to have mullets?
Yeah.
Now,
I
this
think
was
it takes
shot in
place.
Canada, right?
Yeah. What? So you would think everybody would have mullets.
Kind of, but I don't
Hockey
think
country.
right. You would think, but just well, I guess you could say Boone had a mini
Yeah.
mullet,
Uh,
but culture and stuff over there is a little different. Things look a little different. I thought it was very appropriate.
yeah. You have to have some place in the wilds, or you can have a cemetery like that. Deep in the woods.
Absolutely, and how
Yeah.
appropriate was that Midian is below the cemetery. And it was funny
Yeah.
because everyone thought Midian was a place or a town.
Yeah. In there. But it goes back to like I said, it's a mythology movie, and I think that's why I've felt a good connection with it. And even as a Satanist, I can find connections with it. I think mythology movies in general, anybody of any religion can find some relatable thing to it
Sure.
themselves in some way.
Um,
With Star Wars,
let's yeah.
Star
Let's
Wars is
talk about
mythology.
some of those connections.
Well, I mean, you have some of these archetypes in there. You have Boone, who is a dies and comes back. There's the resurrection themes within that, which aren't limited to Jesus. The Jesus story was copied from elsewhere.
Well,
It goes older than that. Um, and you have like Narcisse also as I think as that companion, even if he's mad, but helps the story along, kind of like the Han Solo to Luke Skywalker
oh, very
in that
much so.
sense. Lylesburg, of course, the boss, the old teacher, and there's also the pull within that of the themes of Lylesburg saying the safety we need to employ the law and stay within these rules and stuff for safety, and it reaches a threshold point where Boone has this, as the savior of Midian, has to say no, like we can't like keep intellectualizing this, we have to fight and let out the primal. And that's also what we get to the beast. There's a concept called the beast, which I think is just symbolic of man's carnal nature
Mm-hmm.
in Cabal. And we also see that in William Golding's Lord of the Flies. I think the same thing. There's a reference to the beast that the boys think is an actual beast that's somewhere in the field and on the island, and I think that represents the carnal nature of the boys and what's going on in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I can find my book. There's an excerpt I'd like to read, and I've actually incorporated this into rituals myself as like an introduction.
Nice.
And it's the scene where Boone is in the final fight, the final confrontation against Decker, and we see it stylized in the movie, and it's great and all, but the book I think really brings the whole dynamic in there, because if you remember, Boone is in his human form, and then he transforms, into what's called like the beast, and
Mm-hmm.
gets the marks on his faces and stuff. And I think like this excerpt of the book really helps explain that. If I could just read this. So Decker just realizes that some NightBreed are not immortal, that some can be killed.
Mm-hmm.
And so Boone retreated before the display with more mortal terror in his gut. Decker was right. The dead could die. He drew breath through mouth and punctured throat. He'd made a near fatal error, staying human in the presence of the mask. And why? for some absurd idea that this final confrontation should be man to man, that they'd trade words as they fought, and he'd undo the doctor's ego before he undid his life. It wouldn't be that way. This was a patient's revenge on his corrupted healer. This was a beast and a butcher, tooth to knife. He exhaled, and the truth in his cells came forth like honey. His nerves ran with bliss. His body throbbed as it swelled. In life, he'd never felt so alive as he did at these moments, stripping off his humanity and dressing for the night. No more, he said, and let the beast come from him everywhere. Decker raised his machete to undo the enemy before the change had been completed, but Boone didn't wait. Still transforming, he tore at the butcher's face, taking off the mask, buttons, zipper, and all, to uncover the infirmities beneath. Decker howled at being revealed, putting his hand up to his face to half cover it against the beast's stare. Boone snatched the mask up from the ground and began to tear it apart, his claws shredding the linen. Decker's howls mounted. Dropping his hand from his face, he began to swipe at Boone with insane abandon. The blade cut Boone's chest, slicing it open, but as it returned for a second cut, Boone dropped the rags and blocked the blow, carrying Decker's arm against the wall with such force that he broke the bones. The machete fell to the ground, and Boone reached out for Decker's face. Last paragraph. The steep howl stopped as the claws came at him, the mouth closed. The features slackened. For an instant, Boone was looking at a face he'd studied for hours, hanging on its every word. And that thought, his hand, at that thought, his hand went from face to neck, and he seized Decker's windpipe, which had funded so many lies. He closed his fist, his claws piercing the meat of Decker's throat. He then pulled. The machinery came out in a wash of blood. Decker's eyes widened, fixed on his silencer. Boone pulled again and again. The eyes glazed, the body jerked and jerked, then started to sag. Boone didn't let it drop. He held it as in a dance, and undid the flesh and bone as he'd undone the mask, clots of Decker's body striking the walls. There was only the dimmest memory of Decker's crimes against him in his head now. He tore with a breed's zeal, taking monstrous satisfaction in a monstrous act. When he'd done his worst, he dropped the wreckage to the earth and finished the dance with his partner underfoot. There'd be no rising from the grave for this body, no hope of earthly resurrection. Even in the full flood of his attack, Boone had withheld the bite that would have passed life after death into Decker's system. His flesh belonged only to the flies and to their children, his reputation to the vagaries of those who chose to tell his story. Boone didn't care. If he never shrugged off the crimes Decker had hung around his neck, it scarcely mattered now. He was no longer innocent. With this slaughter, he became the killer Decker had persuaded him he was. In murdering the prophet, he made the prophecy true.
Even though he was doing more good than, the senseless killing that old Doc was all about.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me share that.
No, powerful, man. Powerful.
Yeah, powerful piece to it.
Yeah, I definitely, I see as I did last night, from being a kid to being an adult, I pick up on so much more in movies that I used to watch that I was like, philosophically, how the beast was constantly a running theme throughout the entire story.
Yeah. And we also have the law that, Loudsburg said, this is the law. And I've watched the movie with people who've turned to me and said, why does he keep saying that, the law? What is the law? And I think it's kind of understood that, it's the authority of what he's doing to keep order. And you see why, they say in the beginning, we can't eat the meat. It's the law. We see kind of why, because you can bite something and have it live
and completely
and turn it into breed. Yeah.
And pass that gift on.
Yeah.
Certainly don't want Decker coming back.
Yeah.
That was and then, that correlation, and you really kind of brought that out to light too, is between when you were reading how Boone's my healer did this to me. Someone who was supposed to help me, get better, get healthier. And here he's just trying to destroy him, sets him up for that 30 gun salute
Yeah.
demise that he meets. And a lot of people, and I could almost see like someone who views Christianity in that way, because when you think about it, there's been so much done just priest wise, and we won't go into all that, but how that betrayal of trust.
Mm-hmm.
This film really brings it, and that's what people always go, oh, Stephen King. I'm like, fuck no, Clive Barker.
Yes. And actually, you bring up Christianity. We do see in the flashback scene when Babette holds Laurie's hand and sends the vision of what the history of the breed was like. We see like the Inquisition taking NightBreed and torturing them, and trying to kill them off because they think they must be demonic.
Yeah,
and of course that wonderful great one-liner where Boone picks up Reverend Ashbury, doesn't kill him, but he just says, we don't like priests here.
That was definitely gave me a good chuckle. Yeah. But Clive was always good about bringing issues that were current issues into some of his writing too. I think.
Yeah. He was. So Clive Barker is gay, and he was still in the closet at that time.
Yes.
So there was some. Magus Gilmore makes some allusions to that in the introduction that he wrote to the book, saying that there may be connections with him trying to. I wouldn't say rationalize is the right word, but channel out that kind of frustration of having to be in the underground in that sense.
Mm-hmm. Or being in the dark. Because I always thought that was kind of interesting too, that once they would come up, sunlight, would burn most of them.
Yeah.
Or was it all of them?
No, some of them, because you saw like, Boone was okay.
But I thought just because maybe he was like special, like the chosen one.
Yeah, I mean, there's a line from Rachel when she's trying to explain the NightBreed to Laurie, saying, like the sunlight, like her daughter Babette, like the sunlight can kill her, but some of us can go beyond it because we've gone beyond death. And I think there's some illusion there that like some of the NightBreed are like the resurrected undead kind of ones, or maybe. But they do film that additional scene with the guy who's talking to his stuffed dog, his stuffed wolf, or whatever it is, in the gas station. They filmed that scene, I think, to help try to explain, more of the backstory.
Oh yeah,
because he says like, there's different ways to kill them and so on.
Natural ingredients are overrated.
That's true.
Could not agree more.
What NightBreed ingredients?
It's and it's like that age-old battle between what is considered normal and what is considered abnormal. By societal rules. And I think he covers that in this film also. To a certain degree. Just a wealth of information on this film. Definitely appreciate you coming on, and everybody out in the comment section. You guys were awesome as always. And there was a few out there that said that they haven't seen this film. So I would say now is the time. I found it on Peacock. Of all places.
Yeah. I don't know who's carrying things, but good to know that it's out there.
Yeah, oh yeah. And thank goodness, because every Halloween season you're always getting your Michael Myers fix, your Jason, your Freddy fix, and of course Pinhead fix. Well, this time somebody kind of stepped outside the box and grabbed some of the other films that I feel that were just as influential on the genre, as those key horror icons. Well, NightBreed has definitely stood the test of time. People are just as excited about it today as they were back then. So I think the more people get to see this film, they're going to be like, hey, this is a wild ride that's up my alley.
Yeah.
It was monsters delivered in a different way, in a more meaningful way. You could really kind of like latch onto him. We haven't really seen a lovable character like that since Frankenstein. Because, we felt some degree of feeling sorry for the guy. Well, these NightBreed, you can definitely kind of like feel their pain, and you're gripped by it, and you want to see them just tear that mob up.
Yeah, and they're the outsiders. They're the monsters driven underground, and yet the audience relates to that, not the humans.
Absolutely,
humans are the bad guys.
That I don't know if he was like considered a sheriff or head of the
Captain Eigerman. Yeah, good. I thought he did a great job. That actor, I could tell he enjoyed the role. He just did a great job of just being an asshole cop. Like corrupt guy. In the director's cut, you see more of the background. There's some more background scenes of them loading up with the firearms and stuff. The Sons of the Free, as they're called in the book too, and he mentions it briefly, Sons of the Free, but they're actually like actual militia group in the story.
That makes a lot of sense too. So, yeah. So, Todd asks, have we discussed The Exorcist yet? Have you seen the new one?
I haven't seen the new one. I remember seeing the original one when it was re-released to theaters like about 20 years ago. That included the spider walk scene. That was the big, pull to that. But I was never a huge Exorcist fan. I actually liked Exorcist 3.
Sequel, that's been my favorite forever.
All right, so I'm not alone in that.
Nope. I mean, when I saw the original, I dug it. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
But I not as nearly as much. I got more of an eerie, horrific sense when watching the third one, because it almost kind of like brought it down to where was I going with that? It wasn't like your typical possession. It wasn't like a demonic possession per se, because it was a guy that the serial killer that they put to death got slipped into his body, and now he's the Gemini killer. So that was more terrifying to me, because you took away all that hocus pocus, I am demon, shit. And it made it more human.
Yeah.
And just the way he talked about all the different killings and stuff he did.
Yeah. If you want to talk The Exorcist, I'm not your guy. I'm only just barely, familiar. I think Exorcist 3 is the only one I actually own on DVD.
With good reason.
Yeah. I just like that particular one. But
it was just a better story.
Yeah. And I know other people are obsessed with that movie. So Rosemary's Baby.
I agree with you, Dante. Rosemary's Baby. Much better.
And there's a reason why Rosemary's Baby is on the film list and Exorcist is not. Because I used to, years ago, I had a website called Hollywood, where I took the list of movies from the Church of Satan suggested film list and had linked them to IDB and was going to write reviews and stuff like that. It didn't end up happening, but I had a couple of people who emailed me back then and say, "Oh, how come The Exorcist is not on that satanic film list? Like, what the hell?" It's like, well, because it doesn't have anything to do with Satanism.
No,
demonic possession's a Christian belief, not a satanic one.
Exactly. So it's one of those things that I'll watch it just because the original, it was well beyond its
Yeah,
time. They
there's
did
nothing
things in
wrong
that.
like that.
They broke down barriers in that film
Yeah,
that no one had ever seen, which is why all these other possession movies just bore the hell out of me.
yeah. A lot of them just seem to
I
be
don't even like them.
trying to reinvent that or just copycat.
How the hell could you reproduce or do something different? I don't
Yeah,
see how that would be unless the possessed person embodies the so-called demon, and they just go around and start destroying life as we know it. That
yeah,
would be the only newer interesting way to look at it, because otherwise it's always the same shit: priest, possessed kid, over and over again, nothing new.
yeah.
But as I understand, a lot of people, I think more from like a filmmaker perspective, like it was a very well done sequel, you know. So that's fine. I will give it a try. Will I pay $13 to see it? Hell no. I'll wait for VOD when it's like free. Oh, and another one I always get asked about is, what do you think of the Pope's Exorcist?
I have not seen that. I've had some friends who really loved it, but I don't know anything about it beyond the title. So,
So they weren't sitting there waiting for Russell Crowe to go, "Are you entertained, Satan?" Because that's what I was getting like the entire time watching the thing. I'm just like, I can't see him outside of Gladiator. I don't know. That's just me. Licking County Metalhead says the Amityville Horror was boring.
I don't know, the fly scenes and it grossed me out. And I'm
I
puking
guess
and
it
all
just depends
that.
on
Yeah,
what your type of horror is.
yeah.
So I don't know.
Well,
A
I'm from
house being
Massachusetts,
possessed is
so
kind of
I like the
inefficient.
idea that it was a Massachusetts thing. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and as I understand it, the house is still there.
yeah. I saw some like photos, and it was like for sale at some point, and yeah, I don't know. One of those things, somebody out there knows far more about this than I do.
Let's see here. Todd says the Pope's Exorcist has a terrible demon voice. I'm sorry, has terrible demon voiceovers. He's referring to himself because he's a black metal singer.
Oh, well, there you go. Yeah,
He says, I should have been the voice dub. And
probably should
I
have.
agree with him like 1,000,000%. That would have been more horrific than you get the child's voice, the demon voice on top of each other at the same time.
Yeah,
It just sounds terrible. But yeah, this film, I don't know. It gave me the chills, the NightBreed, but not more so in like maybe like kill scenes, like when Narcisse takes
yeah,
this friggin' scalp off. I was like, oh wow, look at that, because you never really seen somebody just take two
yeah,
thumb knives and
yeah,
have at it with themselves. So, but
yeah,
I just ended up kind of like, I really love this.
yeah.
Doesn't scare me a bit. I just love the story.
Well, I would say Nightbreed gives me chills, not in like the horror sense, but in like the
Right.
thrilling sense, because I'm like cheering on, like the Nightbreed, like that scene where he releases the berserkers, and Boone is
Oh,
like, "Go
so
get them,
good.
boys!" I'm like, "Ooh, yeah,
That's the type of films that I really dig too. It's where I can root for the well, I guess some people would consider them to be the bad guys, but they were, basically
yeah." The
anti-heroes.
protagonists, yeah, yeah, or that the anti-heroes, yeah,
Oh man. So from Magister, Bill, and myself, go watch this movie if you haven't seen it. It is so worth it, and you will probably want to watch it over and over again.
You find a director's cut if you can too. That was on Netflix for a long time, but it's probably got taken off. Probably got moved elsewhere.
Oh crap!
You said it's on
Well,
Peacock, man.
I'll
Or
I don't
do what
know.
I do. Buy the physical media so that you're not at the whims of a streaming service when you want to watch your favorite movies.
I agree.
I'm crazy and old fashioned like that. What can I say?
No, I have a lot of my favorites on DVD too. It's just some of the older ones I have trouble getting a hold of on disc.
Yeah,
But
might be hard.
now that I know that there is a director's cut, because I never knew this, I don't know what rock I was living under. I'm definitely going to go get myself a copy of that for sure.
Yep, different ending on it too.
Oh, see? Now I must. I have no choice. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. This has been a blast. I was like, there is absolutely no reason to run a commercial of any kind. There's so much in this film that...
Yeah, and I'd be happy to talk more about it if anybody wants to, hit me up on the usual places.
Oh, yes. Magister Bill is literally everywhere. So thank you, Magister Bill, for joining me again. I will definitely have you back on, because every time we get together, it's always just a blast. I could talk this stuff for like hours and hours and hours. Obviously, everybody out there in Black Flame Land that showed up, man, you guys were awesome. Every comment was just fantastic. It was hard to get them up there because my laptop hates me. So working on that. Don't worry about that. I'll get that fixed for you. So definitely check out the rest of the programming for this week. The goddamn program will be back this Saturday after a couple weeks hiatus, and I'm going to be having some guest co-hosts that never seen before, and I think you might dig it, because it's always good to run through the week's goddamn list of shit that just makes you go WTF. And we just shred it the hell apart. So definitely tune in for that. And I have a very special guest coming next week. He is the gentleman who did the movie score to Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
Ooh, nice. I'll have to tune in for that.
And his name is escaping me, so hopefully he's not watching right now. Otherwise, my damn ass is going to be on the frying pan. John Massari, that's it. So definitely tune in for that. And thank you all again so much. So as you're getting ready to lay it down for the night with visions of monsters from under the grave that are just trying to live, just remember, stay heavy.